This is Amend and Progress, your go-to podcast from Vidori for all things promotional material review. Get ready for actionable insights, valuable perspectives, and best practices to elevate your workflow and team morale.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Amend and Progress, Vidori's podcast about the material review process. I'm your host, Annalise, and today we're going to be talking about department or role-specific reviews, when to use these types of reviews at your organization, and various considerations to take into account when deciding if and when to use these types of reviews at your organization. Joining me today in the conversation is Anne Swearingen, CEO at Six Tangerines Consulting. Anne, welcome back. Delighted to have you as always.
Hey, good to see you again, Annalise.
So you're a regular on the show at this point. And, with every guest, I do these sort of getting to know you questions at the top of the hour. And I have to use some new questions today because you've cycled through all the ones that I'm using. Exactly. So some new questions that I think will be kind of fun to dig into. So are you ready? Okay. What's one thing you like about your neighborhood?
The fact that this is going to sound really crazy, but the city has actually put multi-use parks. So if you've got kids in sports in the cities, you can walk right up to the park and they're playing. It's kind of reduces the drive time a little bit, but it's, lots of facilities, lots of bike paths. Oh my gosh, we're so connected on bike paths.
Cool.
And walking and stuff. So having that, they put it in pickleball courts. We know pickleball is the latest craze. So they even repainted the tennis courts. So the tennis fans aren't so happy, but the pickleball fans are. So
Yes.
there's just a lot of facilities, but I like that it's multi-use. It's big enough that the city can use, and that way it helps maintain it a little bit too.
Oh, super cool. Yeah, I had the exact scenario happen. There's a tennis court in my neighborhood as well. They repainted it for the pickleball folks. They're really taking over.
Yeah. Have you
This is a
played? It's super
phenomenon.
fun.
I haven't. I really want to. I have heard it's like extremely fun and just like you can get in quickly and there's like a, low learning curve and things like that. So I need to go out there. There's like open play.
Okay.
But I'm just intimidated. It's like new and I don't know what I'm doing. But
Well,
anyway.
when we get together, I'll bring my rackets and we'll go play.
Oh my gosh, perfect. Okay, I'm going to hold you to it.
Okay.
All right, second question. What is the best part about your job?
I actually love teaching and raising somebody else above, because so many people that I work with are so much smarter than I am, and just to share what I can so that they can be better than I am. And so giving them points and tips, but not pontificating in that sense. And so I just love working with people.
Amazing. I love working with you. So here we go.
Here we go.
Symbiotic relationship.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks for entertaining those as always. And I was just excited to get some new questions into the mix with you.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. All right, we're going to talk about blank only reviews. Can you define this, contextualize this for me? Because, we were sort of talking about this pre-record. There are a lot of considerations here and things to be made aware of, but let's like level set and define, if you can for me, please, like what really we're talking about today.
So within the Vidori platform and within any kind of review, there's always what I like to say, who's in the zoo that has to review things, right? And it's, is it marketing that's reviewing it? Is it medical, regulatory, legal? And if they are, what are they actually reviewing? And do you really need everybody all the time is really what it comes down to. And you don't, but you have to define what that means. Manuscripts are tough, invitations to conferences, every company and organization has a different level of risk. So I think it's really important to think about, who do you really like, what role? And we talked about this a little bit. What role does legal play? Does medical play? Does regulatory play? And then if you have another marketing review or something else, or, another group reviewing it, what role do they play? And what does that mean?
Yeah. And when it comes to agreeing upon these types of reviews, so let's say, for example's sake, you want a regulatory only review. What are the business conditions under which a type of review like that would make sense? And who would make the call on, we're going to use this specific type of workflow or this review workflow for this piece of content?
Regulatory only, I think, is really, really tough
Okay.
because, especially in the medical device pharma space, regulatory is really going, are we staying within the regulations of our product, what we have approved, and things like that. And so
Mhm.
it tends to be claim related, but claims tend to be tied a little bit to medical stuff. And so you may have a medical regulatory review just to get some new claims put in, that won't include legal. You may need to include legal depending on what you want to say, because then if you throw words like superior or better than, then legal is going to be like, whoa, how are we going to check that, and how long is that going to be? So you may have more of a medical regulatory pathway, like
Okay.
for manuscripts
Mm.
potentially, where legal doesn't have to look at it, but you need medical to look at it to be medically accurate, and you need regulatory to say, whoa, we're publishing something that's off label and we can't say that, or something like that, especially in the review process, right? I see those two fairly together.
Okay.
Are there scenarios? There probably is, but they were super rare, like less than 1% of what we saw in
Okay.
it. But lots of legal only stuff.
Okay, so let's talk through those. Like what types of content fits within that legal only review? Talk me through that specific type of
Yeah,
review
yeah.
stream.
So when you're going through the whole process, and if you think that if you're in the midst of configuring a system or whatever, you really have that time to flip things over and say, hey, who really needs to look at it? So you go back and you look. I'm kind of going back, but I'll come back. Um, what is the role? So if legal is really looking at, hey, how is this going to get us in trouble,
Mm.
essentially, or keep us out of trouble? It may be things like, um, they may look at contracts,
Okay.
that go through, like releases for information. So, I'm releasing my images to you as a company, or I'm releasing whatever it is, which medical or regulatory probably don't need to be on. Some of the super benign stuff like conferences or tweets, or hey, come see us at booth 75 at, X conference. Medical and regulatory don't need to look at that, right?
Mm.
And those types of things. Um, but you've got to think about that, right? And there may be others. Invitations. Hey, dear doctor, dear nurse, please, we're formally inviting you to come to something,
Mhm.
right? Um, legal only,
Yep. Right.
because they may have the contract with that as well. And it's fine, but there's really no medical claims that they're making, or there's no regulatory risk because it's a straight up invitation.
Mhm.
On the flip side, you'll have a lot more stuff that is really more medical and more regulatory together that maybe you can skip out legal on.
Sure.
So just finding a balance.
And is this something that would be included in SOPs? Like, where is this documented and communicated? Because I imagine these are specific scenarios in which you're able to use these like different types of review workflows. And so where does this information live in terms of I'm submitting this piece of content, I know that I'm going to pick the
Yep.
legal only review because it's this piece of content. Like talk me through where it's documented and communicated.
So most organizations will have a procedure that they call out. This is what medical does. This is, in the roles responsibilities. This is what a medical reviewer has kind of scope for. This is what a
Yep.
regulatory reviewer has scope for. This is what legal. And then in the flows, because they'll tell you, submit, do this, and then if it's this type of content, which will probably be on the appendix, then it can go to a legal only. But the beautiful thing about the Vidori system and the platform is the fact that you can always add in more reviewers than your basic workflow,
Right.
right? So if
Mhm.
legal looks at it and says, yeah, I got it, I can either kind of not full blown reject it, but amend and resubmit, right?
Mhm.
And add more reviewers, right? And say, hey, no, this really has to go, or the reviewer can add more reviewers as well, right? And so
Yep.
if you can figure out how risk tolerant or risk averse your organization is and what they're willing to do, and if legal is saying, hey, yeah, we're willing to say these can just come straight through us, legal should be talking to their partners in medical regulatory, And then all of those people have input into the procedure,
Mhm.
to be able to say, yeah, we're in alignment with this. Now, people do change, ideas do change, lawsuits happen, stuff happens, things may go back, and the pendulum swings the other
Yeah,
way.
sure, sure.
Right. But usually it's in the procedure, and then the procedure matches kind of the workflows, but then has those other opportunities.
Mhm. Now, at the sort of the top of the episode, you talked a little bit about risk. You just mentioned risk again, and sort of the risk-based approach here. Talk me through this, like the role of risk in these types of reviews and sort of like considerations that organizations need to be aware of when deciding if this risk-based approach makes sense for them.
Right. And so it kind of goes back to some of the stuff we've spoken about in other episodes. The fact that content review is part of your labeling. Labeling is controlled by regulations, right? And so it's okay. Well, how do we define labeling? Is a conference invite or hey, see us at booth 75, is that labeling? No, it's not. So you kind of can say, okay, this doesn't fall into that labeling piece. So it's less risky for us to have everybody review it. So therefore, we can just go one track legal only.
Mhm.
But manuscripts have potential stuff to put things in there. It's not, you can argue if it's labeling or not, but like the marketing materials that, say, hey, 75% of people, had wound closure in whatever time, or 75% of people, had nausea with whatever medication it was, or whatever it is, right? Those are claims. Claims are part of
Yeah.
labeling. You're going to have more review, right? And so one way to look at it is how does the organization define labeling as part of their quality system, part of the regulation, and then choose risk that way.
Mm.
But you also have an option. So that's where I've seen it be the most successful, because people can get behind it because there's a regulation that says, hey, this kind of supports it. And it's not just Anne saying, hey, yeah, legal shouldn't, only legal needs to look at this. There's been some thought in behind it. And that can actually be justified in their procedure as well.
Mhm. Right, that justification makes everyone a little bit more comfortable with the distinct reviews or only particular roles being
Correct.
involved. So we've talked, I imagine, so is the key benefit here speed? Like,
Yes.
okay, so is really like you're gonna select these like department specific reviews because of a speed factor, you don't want it, or is any other benefits like
Oh gosh. Yeah.
beyond speed, what would drive someone to sort of like think about these types of reviews at their organization?
Speed tends to be the big one, right? To your point, as long as legal teams got the resources to do it.
Sure, good point. Good
Right?
point.
I mean,
Yep.
legal's super stretched, but legal may decide, I know we're talking a lot about legal, but they may decide that, hey, if it's a conference invite, the paralegal can take it and just go,
Mm,
right? They don't need
sure.
a higher level or more senior, more somebody from the legal team. Speed by all means, low level of risk, right? They're like, why do
Sure.
we have to bring in everybody? Which, if the organization wants to be nimble, it's
Mm,
something that to think about. And we all know these days that some of this stuff goes through very quickly, because when you're at a conference, everybody is on their phone. There's tweets going out, there's blogs, there's whatever going out, right? And so sometimes it you just need it like right away
yeah,
to do that. And some of the other ones, not so much. You need a little
for
bit of
sure.
time, but there still is speed. But hopefully that can be done.
Yeah, I imagine for some exactly, you need something that goes out ASAP, low risk, we're gonna go ahead and take one of these expedited approvals or approaches.
Yeah.
So what would be one thing you would want to leave folks with? Maybe organizations are already doing this, or maybe they don't have these types of workflows set up. Like, what would be one consideration or something to leave the folks with if they're maybe debating setting up these types of reviews?
Take a look at your metrics, see where your hangups are and what type. And we've talked about this before, right? Like, use data to help you do this. Don't just do it because I said so, right? It's one of those things where if you've got data and everything is going through all three people, and everything is taken 2.5 days, does it really need to go through all three people?
Mm.
Knowing
Mhm.
what the organization knows about regulations, like labeling regulations, things like that. Can you think about efficiencies to say, you know what, we'll do this? Consider the resources that you've got, right?
Yep.
I'm sure medical and regulatory would be thrilled to say, hey, yeah, if I don't have to review it, awesome, because it's one less thing on their plate, right?
Sure.
Legal, though, tends to get a lot of stuff, but if they can streamline it, they know that they're the only ones doing it. They may help identify with discussions with medical regulatory that it's low risk. And they're like, yeah, approve, approve, approve. Or they may give some blanket approvals, like, you know what? Put it on the claim sheet,
Right.
or some
Right.
templated language that they're like,
Mhm.
hey, these are 6 versions of come see us at booth 75. And we're just
Mhm.
going to submit it once and then you can go for it.
Yep.
So those are the things I would do is like pay attention to your metrics, where are your holdups, and if people are complaining that things are slow for certain things that they really need to get out, A, you got the data to show it, and B, there are some things that are less risky in the content review process that you can definitely streamline.
For sure. I love starting with data. No surprise
No
that
surprise.
you go there. But in terms of like you talked about using sort of the risk and the regulatory guidelines to justify these types of
Yep,
reviews, also the data can help justify these types of reviews to all the
correct.
points you just made. So what a perfect place to start. Well, Anne, a much more tactical episode for us today, but I think super helpful and definitely something for those that are like involved in this process or system owners or process owners can, consider as they think about their
Yep.
own workflow. So thanks for coming on. Just delighted to have you as always.
Awesome. Good to see you again. Take care.
And folks, the conversation doesn't stop here. Follow Badori on LinkedIn for updates on new episodes. Join in on the conversation. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, things you want us to tackle in future episodes. You can subscribe to Amend and Progress on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like today's episode, rate and review the show. Until next time, this is Annalise signing off for Amend and Progress. Have a fantastic day.